Good morning, 573, Columbia, Missouri. Happy Friday. We're another week closer to a much-needed Thanksgiving break. You are listening to the Breakfast of Champions on KCOU 88.1 FM. I am Brandon Anthony, formerly known as B. Scott, coming to you live solo from the last time in Columbia this semester from the studio on the bottom floor of the Student Center. Yes, Keegan Hartman is indeed out this week, back in the good old Joplin MO. We were going to cancel the show, but I chimed in and said, hey, wait a minute. I got this. Let me do this. So here we are. Let the show go on. That being said, here we are. We're going to have some fun. A lot to cover. But of course, it wouldn't be the Breakfast of Champions without a fresh brew to open the show up. So that being said, we're just going to dive right in to this week's edition of the Fresh Brew. And we will begin with the 2020 Masters, as yesterday, down in the state of Georgia. Man, I can tell you it's already weird right now, and it is quite bizarre mentioning these two names in November. However, yesterday, after a long belated wait, the 2020 Masters teed off at Augusta National Golf Course in Augusta, Georgia. The 2019 defending Masters champion Tiger Woods began the defense of his fifth green jack yesterday, having a pretty successful first round 68 and finishing the day 4 under par. He's 3 shots off the lead of Paul Casey, sitting at 7 under, who, of course, is coming off a second-place finish at the PGA Championship back in August at Harding Park. He's still looking for his first major as well. Webb Simpson, Xander Schauffele, and Justin Thomas are all tied for second behind Paul Casey going into today's second round at Augusta. You can watch today's action all day on ESPN and CBS, as well as the third and final rounds on Saturday and Sunday. Shifting gears over to the NFL, we got another team hit with the COVID-19 bug this season, and that is the undefeated Pittsburgh Steelers, as they announced on Tuesday that tight end Vance McDonald had tested positive for COVID-19, placing him on the reserve COVID-19 list. The Steelers also placed starting quarterback Ben Roethlisberger, offensive lineman Gerald Hawkins, running back Jalen Samuels, and linebacker Vince Williams on the reserve COVID-19 list, as well as close contacts to McDonald. The Steelers, who are, of course, off to an impressive 8-0 start, will face their first bit of adversity with this news. They are set to take on their division rival Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday. Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin stated yesterday that he hopes Roethlisberger will be ready to go on Sunday, but it's just a matter of his test results throughout the week. If he gets consecutive negative test results, he will be good to go against the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday. If not, backup Mason Rudolph will suit up and relive his starting days like he did last year for Pittsburgh. So another interesting situation. Another team decimated by COVID-19. It's changing the NFL this year especially, but hey, it's the year of flexibility. And there ain't anything better than that. After that, that rounds out this week's edition of the Fresh Brew. We are going to take a short break. When we get back, ladies and gentlemen, we got a very special guest joining us live for our first segment. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned. You are listening to the Breakfast of Champions on KCOU 88.1 FM.
Tune into High and Tight with me and my co-host Logan Perone as we catch you up on the latest signings, trades, news, scores, and highlights from around America's pastime. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on the 88.1 FM stream and on our website kcu.fm on the Blue Box.
Looking for something that smashes sports content and video game content together into one big late-night radio sandwich? Listen to Quarter Circle Backboard, a show in which your boy Chris Mitchell brings you the latest and hottest in sports news that you like and video game news that I like every Friday night at 11 p.m. on KCOU. I talk about everything from football to basketball to Street Fighter to Fallout to you name it. Is it worth staying up past your bedtime? Tune in and find out.
Saturday in Columbia is KCOU Sports Saturday. Tune in right here on KCOU 88.1 FM Columbia for all-day sports talk starting at 9 a.m. Cap Cap off your Sports Saturday with coverage of Mizzou football from the student voice of the Missouri Tigers. Don't just Saturday, KCOU Sports Saturday.
Grown-ups, in between, churning babies. Right about now, it's your boy, you heard, back again. DJ Manny.
Shout out to Keegan Hartman here in spirits here this Friday morning. And man, after that first segment, I didn't realize how exhausting this is to do alone, man. You're sitting in here in the studio and just sitting here exhausted after one segment. But hey, we got a lot to get to still. As we're back here, KCOU 88.1 FM. I'm Brandon Anthony. Keegan Hartman, of course, not here with us this morning. It's not the same at all, but like I said, I know Keegan Hartman is here with us in studio. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we got the special honor here in a couple minutes, pretty soon actually, to welcome in the biggest Vikings fan, Vikings supporter I've come to know, my Uncle Greg, into the studio. Here he is calling right now. We're going to get you hooked up, get him hooked up. Uncle Greg.
Hey, B, how we doing?
Good, how you doing?
Good.
You were live on the Breakfast of Champions.
Oh, very good, very good. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's a great time. It's great to have you on as well. So we got to talk about your Minnesota Vikings, man, because slow start. They're 3-5. But hey, they won against the Packers, which I'm sure you're happy about, and they beat the Detroit Lions as well. A little bit slow start, only one win in their last 6 games, one against Houston, but a lot of guys you lost a lot of guys in the offseason. What are your initial thoughts on how the season is going?
Well, certainly the beginning of the season was tough to take, and it's understandable when you look at the number of key players, especially the cornerbacks that we lost, and certainly has been a disappointing start. But at the same time, looking at the last couple games, it's been exciting to see that maybe now we're starting to gel and trying to meet the expectations that many people had for the team. So we're going in the right direction. That's always good. Coming into Chicago in my backyard. So looking forward to seeing them on Monday night.
Yeah, it should be a fun game. And not to mention, Dalvin Cook is leading the league in rushing through Week 9. He has 144 rushes for 858 yards. He ran all over the Green Bay Packers, the win 2 weeks ago. I don't know. Everyone's talking for MVP for Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, quarterbacks, but I would make a case for Dalvin Cook to be mentioned right there as a running back, honestly. What do you think?
Well, I think certainly he's in the running, but and as a loyal Viking fan, I certainly would love to see it. But at this point in the season, a lot of football to be played, and I like Russell Wilson and what he's doing in Seattle as well. But I think a lot will depend on how we finish off the season, the second half, and hopefully the second half is entirely different than what we saw in the first half. But Dalvin has certainly proven himself to be among the elite running backs in the league. I think well over 800 total yards, receiving and rushing in the last couple games, and about 450 in rushing. So he's demonstrating what we've seen him do in the past, and that'll certainly be a key on Monday night as well.
Yeah, Dalvin has been doing pretty well. So just looking at you guys' upcoming schedule, you got the Bears on Monday night, and then you got the Vikings at U.S. Bank Stadium, then the Panthers, then the Jaguars. So you got some winnable games coming up, and then on December 13th, you travel to Tampa and take on the Buccaneers, which will be a tough game with Tom Brady. So these next 3 games are going to be pretty big for you guys to make a run before that Tampa game and perhaps make a run in the NFC North for sure.
For sure. I've looked at the schedule as well, and 4 out of the next 7, as you mentioned, are at home. So, despite not having a full stadium and the advantages that brings back home, it's still better to play at home, and we look forward to seeing them have that advantage, at least being home for 4 out of the next 7. A couple tough road games in Tampa and the Saints. Saints are always tough with Drew Brees, but certainly a lot better environment without that stadium full as well. So might be an advantage, and I think has been different, obviously, throughout the year with this pandemic and the different environment in every stadium throughout the NFL.
Yeah, the different stadiums are obviously what the talk is. I've always thought going into the season, I'm curious to see what you think about this, Uncle Greg. I was thinking, do you think it's fair for some teams to have fans in their stands and other teams to not, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think, you'd like to see consistency throughout the league. Obviously, it can be an advantage. So, definitely would rather see it a consistent policy throughout the league.
Yeah, I would too, honestly. But that is what it is with the nature of the pandemic and everything. So, Kirk Cousins, though, he's had his ups and downs throughout the course of the year. Obviously, you guys signed him 3 years, $88 million in the offseason. Do you think he's your guy at quarterback for the foreseeable future?
Kirk, it's a crossroads for Kirk. I think he shows some flashes as well. But a big part of his success will be dependent on how well we continue to run the ball. And certainly teams are going to load up in the box and try and stop Dalvin. And that puts more pressure on Kirk, which is, where he can get in trouble. But when they run and they can do their play action, that's where Kirk is efficient, and hopefully will, for the balance of the season, continue to make, we'll make good decisions and take care of the ball is the key. And then I think, we have a shot in most games. So, it'll remain to be seen, but it's time for him to step up and join the elite ranks, in the NFL. And if he does well and Dalvin does well, he'll accomplish that. So, time will tell.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins kind of reminds me of Jimmy Garoppolo in a way, San Francisco, just because he, I mean, the main emphasis is running the ball, and our run game last year was stellar, as you probably aware, and then Dalvin Cook this year, and then it kind of feels like whenever Kirk Cousins or Jimmy Garoppolo are in the pocket, every time they face pressure, they're not really mobile. So there's a lot of talk about the Niners wanting Kirk Cousins because Kyle Shanahan likes Kirk Cousins a lot. But honestly, I don't see how he's any different from Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know.
I think you draw a fair comparison. Again, I don't think either quarterback is very mobile, and that's when Kirk does get in trouble is when he gets the pressure and then is forced to make those decisions quick and sometimes throw into a tight window. So. And that'll be key, Monday night too. If the Vikes can continue to, ground and pound and have a good ground game, that'll take some of the pressure off. Obviously, the Bears with their front line and the pressure that they're going to put on. If we're behind and they can, put their ears back and come rushing the, Cousins.
Yeah,
it's going to be a long night if we're in that situation, which is why ball control and taking care of the ball and turnovers, not having the turnovers, will be a big key in the game. And I think you draw a good comparison between Garoppolo and Cousins. So I think both are at a crossroads and need to take that next step to get into the elite level of QB play in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. Every time you think of top quarterbacks in the league, those two kind of fall in like the middle of the pack, some kind of average. So that's just interesting, in my opinion. So yeah, you got the Bears' stellar defense. So it'll be interesting. They're probably going to come out and stack the box, and how Kirk does on Monday night. The interesting thing about it this year in the NFC, though, and just in the NFL in general, is the 7th playoff spot. So, I mean, how do you feel about the Vikings if they can come out and rattle off a few wins, if they can sneak into the 7th seed? What do you feel about that?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. There's obviously that opportunity in front of the team. There's no doubt, and I think that's lending some motivation to the group, and certainly, I'm a big follower on Vikings.com and following the team online, and I think that the last 2 weeks have certainly given the team the confidence. I think the potential is there, despite the people we've lost on defense, the cornerbacks, but the cornerbacks are starting to learn. It was learned by fire under fire and getting thrown in there. And Zim's defense can be complicated, and he's certainly particular how he likes his cornerbacks to play. So I think they're becoming more comfortable, and the team is starting to believe, and belief is a big part of it. And if they can stick together, I think, yeah, for sure, the playoffs are in sight. But again, like I said earlier, a lot of football to be played. You have to focus on what's in front of you and
take it one game at a time.
One game at a time. The classic statement, but it's so true. And Zim will certainly keep them focused on what's in front of them, and that's certainly the Bear game Monday night. So it should be fun, should be interesting, and growing up here in southern Wisconsin and living in northwest suburbs of Chicago now, Bear Viking, Bear Packer country. So the rivalry is real, and it should be fun.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure you guys got the Bears twice. At least you finished playing the Packers already last week one, and then obviously won that game with Dalvin Cook running all over Green Bay's defense. But yeah, when I look at your schedule, I see the two Bears games and the Buccaneers and the Saints game being, that's 4 games that I think we're gonna have to see in terms of how the team responds, because those are the 4 games I think that are the hardest left on the schedule, and however they come out and play those 4 games will be determined on if they're able to sneak into that 7th spot. Real quick too, I am just interested about, what do you think like the biggest hole is for the Vikings as of right now? Like what do you think that is the position that they need to address most after this year and future in order to get better and stay competitive for upcoming years?
Well, I think offensive line is so key. It all starts there. You have to give those guys credit as well, obviously, with what they've accomplished in the last 2 weeks, and give them some love. But as we know in the NFL, you're always 1 injury or 2 injuries away. You've got Ezra Cleveland as a rookie and stepping in this year, and I think has played tremendous the last couple of games. So I definitely think some defensive tackles. If we know, again, as we discussed, Cousins isn't mobile, so you need to protect the edges, and there's so many good defensive ends in the NFL. So for sure, I think offensive line and probably defensive line as well. So being stout up front and being able to plug the middle in Zim's defense as well is critical and key. So I think he's got some guys in cornerback that he likes. I'm not sure that we know for sure. The rest of the season will give us a lot of film and tape to take a look at it as far as the cornerbacks. But you can bet this, in the next draft, as always, Rick Spielman, the GM, and Zim will always look at cornerbacks. So, Zim's a cornerback guy, and if you can shore up your corners, it allows you to do a lot more things on defense. So, but I think the 2 interior lines and then the cornerbacks will be what you see. I do like what we have in our skilled players on offense. So, maybe a linebacker in there, depending on what happens with injuries. But so.
Yeah, you guys did lose Everson Griffin, I guess, on the edge, so that kind of took away the power, the defensive line and the pass rush for this season. Not as effective. The other position that it's interesting to me is wide receiver, because you got that new rookie Justin Jefferson from LSU. I feel like since you guys lost Stephon Diggs that he came in and he's been kind of making a good has had a good rookie season, making a strong impression so far in the NFL. What do you like about him?
Certainly he shows the speed and the big play potential. I've seen some outstanding catches this year that show the flashes of his skill level and why they liked him to begin with. So, just like the cornerbacks, he started out slow, and I think now Cousins has complete confidence in him. That helps. Made a catch over his shoulder in the last game that was tremendous, and he can make it happen after the catch too. But you do bring up a good point, and I failed to mention that. I still think we could use another big time receiver and some help outside of Thielen and Jefferson. Obviously, we've got a lot of talent in Irv Smith Jr. at tight end, and Rudy still shows his Pro Bowl talent and some of the one-handed catches in the end zone. So, yeah, you bring up a good point. I'd say wide receiver is one that, depending on availability, would be another hole to fill. But you got to like what you see in Jefferson. He gives us that threat, kind of like Diggs when he was here. But he's not Randy Moss yet, but he's got some potential, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's got a few more years to prove himself, but so far so good with him. And just Uncle Greg, growing up in Minnesota, there's usually this norm around Minnesota teams like that they all choke or can't get over the hump. You look at the Twins, the Timberwolves. The Twins always make the playoffs and lose in the first round. The Timberwolves never are good. The Gophers kind of fold when it gets to the big game. I mean, it's the same all across the board for the teams. The Vikings seem to be one of those teams along with the Twins who can make a run. But, I'm really interested to see how they finish this year off and how they handle the rest of their just the rest of their season and seasons prior. I think I like Mike Zimmer, and I'm not sure if you guys have him signed long term, but do you think he's the right coach going forward?
I do. I like Zim. I think he does provide that old school, new school, personality and does provide the motivation for them to have the grit and the toughness that a team needs. And when you follow the Vikings online, you'll hear both sides of the ball, offense and defense, talk about we need to be the most physical team on the field. And I think that comes directly from Zim. I think that's right. Sometimes I wonder if we don't have enough veteran leadership with this group with so many young guys on the team to get us over that hump, to make us an elite team. I wouldn't mind seeing next year, to find at whatever position, a veteran who has Super Bowl, pedigree. And of course, everybody's looking for them, but maybe he's a guy on this tail end of his career, but knows how to lead a team, knows what it takes to be a winning team and a champion, to get us to that next level that has been so elusive. You're just starting out, in life as the Viking, or at least being interested in the Vikings as a 49er fan. But, I'm lifelong Viking fan, and you're right. We always seem to struggle down the stretch. And for me personally, living in, northern Chicago and business in Wisconsin and Packerland, everybody's a Bear and Packer fan around here. I have no allies, and we do always falter, and then we hear about it. So, to be the best, you got to beat the best. So, hopefully this is the team that can do it. I think they've got some pieces to the puzzle. So it's exciting to see that they're on the right track and the needle's going in the right direction.
Yeah, you guys, after last year, I'm not going to bring up the playoffs just because of what happened. But after last year, you guys went through the offseason and you lost Diggs, you lost all those guys. I was like, oh, the Vikings going to be the same. And honestly, at first I thought you guys weren't the same. But these last two games, I don't know. Dalvin Cook's been playing well. Justin Jefferson's playing well. Kirk Cousins has looked better. So I don't know. It'll be fun to see the Vikings the rest of the year and just see how they approach the rest of the season. I mean, they got winnable games on their schedule, and the only 4, I think, against Tampa Bay and the Saints. Honestly, against those teams, it's going to be a defensive battle in terms of which team can put up if your defense can hold guys like Tom Brady and Drew Brees off the offensive side of the ball. I think that's what's going to make the difference in those games.
For sure, no easy task with those two, Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Two goats for sure. But Tom Brady showed that he can be beat. So the potential's there, and you're right. I like how the schedule sets up for the balance of the season, and I think those 2 games are the biggest. On the road for sure it'll be tough, but without the fans, I think it levels the playing field a little bit. So there's hope. There's hope. Regardless how we finish down the road here, but sure like the way things are going, and it makes it fun, on a Sunday or Monday to watch football instead of on the other end when they weren't playing very well.
Yeah, I'm sure it's more exciting now that you've strung together a couple wins to see them. Wish I could say the same thing about the Niners, but we'll see what happens this week too.
You got it.
Well, Uncle Greg, that's all I have. It's a lot of fun having you on.
Awesome. I'm glad that I could join you. I appreciate it. It's an honor. You guys, you and Keegan do a great job. It's always fun to listen to your broadcasts, and you guys are on your game, top notch. You got a bright future, and just continue to have fun, and Skol Vikings.
Skol Vikes, baby. Sounds good. We'll continue to have fun and continue to keep it going.
All right. We'll hope to see you in the holidays.
Sounds good. See you soon. Bye.
You got it.
Well, the Vikings fan indeed shares his opinion on the 2020 Minnesota Vikings thus far. Great Vikings fan, tremendous Vikings fan. And honestly, a little background about Uncle Greg, too. He grew up with brothers who were Packers fans and brothers who were Bears fans. And he had my dad, too, who turned out to be a Dolphins fan. So he has him and my dad are the only 2 that kind of went away from the norm where they grew up in Kenosha. So that's kind of interesting there. But on that note, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we will dive into some NFL Week 10 talk, of course. We got a game to recap from last night. So that will be coming up next after the break. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Breakfast of Champions here on KCOU 88.1 FM.
Walk-Ons, Mizzou's most insightful sports talk from your favorite bench warmers, is now available to listen anytime, anywhere. After every Friday's show with Ben Krakow, Chase Phillips, and Garrett Jones, we post a podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Anchor Podcast app, and anywhere else you get podcasts. We're also on Twitter at KCOU Walk-Ons. End your week with Preferred Walk-Ons, a part of KCOU Sports, and now streaming.
A delicious power breakfast. Great way to start the day.
I'm Brandon Anthony.
And I'm Keegan Hartman.
Make sure to tune in every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. to listen to me.
And me on our new show, Breakfast of Champions.
Here on KCOU Sports, KCOU 88.1 FM.
Make sure to start your week off right by listening to General Admission on KCOU 88.1 FM from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. every Monday morning.
I think he's wrong, though. It's a heartless move. You're agreeing and disagreeing on the same topic. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing that it wasn't a smart move. I'm just not disagreeing with Anthony Davis's dad either.
Once again, that's General Admission from 8 to 9 a.m. on KCOU 88.1 FM for the latest updates from the MLB, NFL, NBA, and the NCAA.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
6 million ways to mob, choose one.
Something in the water.
Woof. Feeling good on this Friday morning. Good. Welcome back into Breakfast of Champions. I'm Brandon Anthony. Said this earlier, but it's hard doing a show alone. But we're getting through. It was nice having Uncle Greg on last segment. I'm sure you guys enjoyed that little Minnesota Vikings talk. As you know, I'm from Minnesota, so it was nice to be there to watch and witness that. But, hey, we got Week 10 NFL action to carry on and talk about. As last night, the Colts and Titans battled it out in the AFC South for the battle for the division. The Colts rounded out victorious in Tennessee, in Nashville. Hey, me and Keegan have been there. They won 34-17 over the Tennessee Titans, the hometown Tennessee Titans. It's a big win for Indianapolis. They took over first in the AFC South. Both teams are now 6-3, and Indianapolis does hold the tiebreaker over the Titans, so they hold first place in the AFC South as of right now. It was a pretty high scoring. It was a pretty dominant win for the Colts. I'm not going to say high scoring because it was 34-17, but it was a pretty dominant win for the Colts. The Colts, for the most part, I mean, Derrick Henry did have 19 carries for 103 yards, but it really didn't seem like it. It seemed like the Colts were able to keep Henry out of the end zone, at least. I mean, it's really hard to stop Derrick Henry in the first place in terms of tackling him and everything like that. And keep him out of the end zone, that's great. I mean, he ran all over you still, but it obviously didn't make a difference in the game. He didn't score a touchdown. So hats off to that Colts defense there. That Colts defense has been playing very well so far this year. I think with the acquisition of DeForest Buckner, it was big for the Colts to have. And Phillip Rivers threw for 29 of 39 for 308 yards and touchdown. And he had a pretty stellar game, and his leading wide receiver is Michael Pittman, who had a big 100-yard receiving game, and that ultimately contributed to the reason of why the Indianapolis Colts were able to take the division lead, the playoffs. Colts defense, also, I mentioned them a little bit earlier, but that Colts defense, in terms of the D-line, able to get pressure on Tannehill, I think, and I mentioned they kept Henry out of the end zone. Tannehill's been one of those quarterbacks for me that's been inconsistent. And we were talking with Uncle Greg about inconsistent type of quarterbacks on that segment. We were talking about Kirk Cousins and Jimmy Garoppolo, the same type of quarterback. They're not mobile. They can't get out of the pocket. Ryan Tannehill kind of screams that type of quarterback to me. And I don't know what it is, but usually the good running teams, you can get away with having an average quarterback under center. And I just don't see Ryan Tannehill being the quarterback that is going to be respected by a lot of people. I think he's there. He's a game manager. He has Derrick Henry in the backfield, and Derrick Henry obviously is Derrick Henry. And Tannehill giving the ball to Derrick Henry and letting him run is usually the go-to game plan for Tennessee every week. So, I mean, I think in order for Tennessee to get back to the AFC Championship game like they did last year, I think Tannehill's really going to have to be more consistent, and that means making the plays. He's got A.J. Brown on the outside. He's got Corey Davis. He's got the weapons. I just feel he's more inconsistent. I feel like last night the Colts sort of came out and pressured Tannehill, and he wasn't able to respond. And that was a big contribute to that. So, I mean, Tannehill, honestly, for me, it's if he improves, they'll go far in the playoffs. They can get back to the AFC Championship game. If they don't, then I don't see them making it past the second round. And, I mean, I don't see them winning the division, honestly, because you got Indianapolis again coming up. But, yeah, Ryan Tannehill, you could do better, honestly, in my opinion. Didn't look that solid last night. It was Derrick Henry running for 103 yards. That was the majority of the Titans' run game. The Chiefs last year, even in the AFC Championship game, were able to contain Derrick Henry enough so that they were forced Ryan Tannehill to sit back and make throws. But he has revitalized his career a little bit coming over from Miami. Give him that. He's looked better than he did in Miami. He stayed healthy, which is a big factor for him in Miami. He can never stay healthy. So, it'll be interesting. Titans next week will travel to Baltimore. That's a showdown with the Ravens, and Indianapolis is a showdown with Green Bay. So both AFC South teams, both on the top, have very hard games coming up next week. Titans got Baltimore, and it's in Baltimore, and Lamar Jackson is going to be ready to run all over Tennessee's defense after what Tennessee did to them last year in the playoffs. It was Tennessee who, of course, upset the number 1 seeded Baltimore Ravens last year in the AFC playoffs. I'm sure Baltimore's wanting to come out and pummel Tennessee. Tennessee's coming off a loss to the Colts. And Thursday night, they got more time to prepare for this game, but they better be prepared going into Baltimore, because if they're not prepared, I'm telling you, Lamar Jackson, Jim Harbaugh is going to be cooking up some plays all on that Titans defense, and they're gonna want to run all over Tennessee after what they did to them last year. And I'm sure this is a game for Baltimore that you're looking at and you circle on the calendar, just to remember what happened last year. And I think the Titans don't come to play if Tannehill doesn't come to play. If Derrick Henry, doesn't have as good of a game, it could be trouble for Tennessee. They could fall another one there. Indianapolis, on the other hand, has got a showdown with the Green Bay Packers. And Green Bay Packers are coming off, obviously, the throttling of my team, the San Francisco 49ers, last Thursday night. And so they've had the extra rest to perform. Indianapolis and Green Bay, this is an interesting game just because Indianapolis' defensive line obviously is pretty good, and I always feel like the MO or the kryptonite of Aaron Rodgers for the Packers is pressure. So if Indianapolis can get pressure on Aaron Rodgers, I think, they have a good chance of winning this game. Use your defensive line to advantage. I think Indianapolis is going to cook up a lot of blitzes, get in Aaron Rodgers' face. If you're the Packers, I'd use a heavy dose of Aaron Jones. I'd protect Aaron Rodgers as much as possible because that's what Indy's going to want to do with that defensive line. It'll be an interesting game for both of these teams coming up. Two tough ones. Green Bay, you can make the argument they really haven't played that challenging of a team. They got Jacksonville this week, so they'll be coming off that. They'll probably run all over Jacksonville. But Green Bay, the hardest game they played, I would suspect it was against Tampa Bay, and they got blown out in that game. So there's that. There's a little something Indy add on to the schedule of a little bit of a tougher game. Indy plays Green Bay, and the Titans travel to Baltimore. Now we're going to look at a couple games. I picked out around 2 games to talk about going on this weekend that are pretty big. The 7-2 Buffalo Bills travel to the desert to take on the 5-3 Cardinals. This is a big game for Arizona after getting trounced all over the field last week by that great Dolphins D-line. And it's important for them to get back on track. As we all know, the NFC West is gruesome tough. It's gruesome tough. The worst team is San Francisco, 4-5. Man, wouldn't it be nice for some of these teams to be in NFC East? They'd be in first place right now. That's how tough the NFC West is. So this is crucial for Arizona, 5-3. If San Francisco wins this week, which I'm not expecting them to, but if they do, they go to 5-5. The Cardinals lose their 5-4. Niners are right back in it, only a half game out from Arizona. So big game for Arizona going up against the 7-2 Bills. Buffalo was able to slow down the Seahawks last week and contain and slow down Russell Wilson just enough to win that game. It's going to be a matter of doing the same thing against Kyler Murray if they can contain him. And obviously Kyler Murray isn't the same type of animal as Russell Wilson is. He can still run. He can still get out of the pocket. He can still make throws. He's still got weapons on the outside. He's got Christian Kirk. He's got DeAndre Hopkins. It'll be interesting to see there what happens with that. I've always told people with Seattle and how it goes going into that game last week. Russell Wilson's been playing out of his mind, right? Out of his mind, been playing amazing. Whatever team figures out a way to slow down Russell Wilson just enough to where your offense can match the production that he's getting from his offense, then you have a chance in the game. If you let Russell Wilson run over and no pressure on him and throw over your secondary, it's going to be a long day. But if you can contain him just enough, shut him down just enough, you might have a chance if you have a strong offense. Buffalo balled out with Josh Allen. Josh Allen's been playing really well, and Stephon Diggs on the outside as well. And that's what Buffalo was able to do to Seattle last week. They contained Russell Wilson just enough, and they were able to win the game off of that. And Kyler Murray, I mean, you got DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk to worry about. You got, I guess, Seattle, you had DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, so I can't really say that you don't have as many tough receivers. But this game, honestly, is I mean, the Cardinals' defense is better than Seattle. And, you know, they're 10th in overall defense. Seattle is last. Which explains that. So this isn't going to be a game where, you know, they're going to be able to shut down Kyler Murray and then you're going to be able to come right down the field on a terrible defense. And Seattle's defense is setting records, and it's on its way to being the worst defense in terms of giving up passing yards in history, unless you're, of course, Jimmy Garoppolo over here, who somehow, you know, makes Seattle look like number one defense when they played him 2 weeks ago. But that's besides the point. But yeah, just saying that Cardinals defense is better, so if Buffalo's offense doesn't show up, it's going to be a tough outing for Buffalo. It's going to be a tough outing for Buffalo because Kyler Murray eventually is going to get open and make plays and do that against your defense. Your defense can get worn out if you're not putting up points against a tough Cardinals defense. It could be a long one as well. I can see that game going either way. But yeah, I'm going to predict Buffalo to win this game. I think the AFC is. The AFC East specifically has dominated teams this year. NFC West teams specifically. I mean, Miami trounced San Francisco at home, Levi Stadium. Buffalo beat Seattle. Miami played close with Seattle, should have won, didn't win, but played close with them. And Buffalo's riding into a hot streak. So I say Buffalo wins this. I'm going to give you a final score of 35-28. It's going to be a 7-point game. It's going to be one of those games where it's going to be 28-28, and Josh Allen's going to get the ball, drive down, and score the game-winning touchdown. That's my prediction. Buffalo over Arizona, 35-28. Buffalo will go to 8-2. Arizona will fall to 5-4. That's my prediction. My unbiased prediction there. So we look at another game, and we got the 2-6 Los Angeles Chargers against the 5-3 Miami Dolphins in Miami at Hard Rock Stadium. It is Tua Tagovailoa, almost said Joe Burrow. It is Tua Tagovailoa versus Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert has been balling out. Some can argue he's a candidate for Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year. It's just too bad that the Chargers defense can't return the favor, honestly. Has been the story. I mean, Justin Herbert's been balling out, and then there's that defense that gives up the game-winning touchdown at the end of the game. That's been the story of the Chargers all year. However, on the other side, Miami coming off a demolition of the Rams. That's the game I forgot to mention about AFC East beating NFC West. The Dolphins beat the Rams last week. Hey, there's that. So the Dolphins are coming off that demolition of the Rams. Their defense played stout. Tua, in his second game as a starter, there's a lot of speculation on whether he should have came in as early as he did to be the starter. Fitzpatrick was playing well, but he's 2-0 as a starter. And guess who else was 2-0 at a starter at a time? Jimmy Garoppolo, yes. Tua didn't have to do much against the Rams. However, he did play better against the Cardinals, threw 20 of 28, 242 yards and 2 touchdowns. Outdueled Kyler Murray, actually, honestly. And, wait, that doesn't make any sense. That was against the Rams, my bad. They haven't played Arizona yet. Yeah, they haven't played Arizona yet. That was against the Rams last week, or maybe I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was Arizona. Anyway, Tua did throw 20 of 28, 242 yards, 2 touchdowns, outdueled either Jared Goff or Kyler Murray, which I'm drawing a blank. Look it up real quick. But Tua had a very good game. So, I mean, he's got promise for the Miami Dolphins. And it was Arizona, my bad. He didn't do much against the Rams in Arizona. He played a little bit better. So now back-to-back wins against the NFC West. The Rams and Arizona, furthering deepening my point about AFC's East success against the toughest division in football this year. So it was against Kyler Murray, outdueled Kyler Murray. And it's a very intriguing offensive matchup. Very intriguing. Kyler Murray's been playing, or Tua Tagovailoa has been playing very well. And that defense, that defense has been ferocious. The pass rush has been pretty good. I don't know if you guys saw, but Christian Wilkins and Kyle Van Noy, two of the best defensive linemen on that Dolphins team, got caught with COVID, like we mentioned in the Fresh Brew. So they could not play on Sunday, so that could hurt the Dolphins' pass rush a little bit. But still, I think the Dolphins' pass rush is fine. Without them, I think they can still get pressure on Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert's going to be running for his life with that ferocious Dolphins defense, and that's going to lead Herbert to make some mistakes. I think Herbert will still have a good game, but I think the Tua Tagovailoa is going to have another good game. I think the Chargers defense is going to have a hard time stopping him at first, and then they're going to kind of beef up a little bit, but it's going to be the same on the other end for Justin Herbert, for Tua Tagovailoa. Justin Herbert, I think, is going to be running for his life as well. So it should be interesting. But yeah, I have the Dolphins improving to 6-3, and they're going to win 30-20 against the LA Chargers. So that's what I have. Those are the two games I wanted to point out Sunday. We still got some time. We got about 13 minutes. So we're going to throw in a new segment when we get back from break. And Keegan Hartman doesn't know about this, so don't tell him it. But I'm just going to surprise y'all when we get back from break. It'll be a new segment, and we'll finish off the show on a strong note. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to KCOU 88.1 FM, Breakfast of Champions. Stay tuned.
Money got me healing. You can't show me how to make a meal.
Messages for all of you sitting in the passenger seat. And apologies if it gets a little uncomfortable. But how does it feel to be at the mercy of someone who thinks a random text is more important than your life? Someone who takes their eyes off the road while speeding along in a 3-ton hunk of steel. Freaky, right? Well, why not just ask them to stop? Or better yet, volunteer to text for them. It might be a little awkward, but believe me, you'll live.
Learn more at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
If you love them enough to sit through their favorite boy band with them, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Driving has a rhythm all its own. Don't wreck it with a text. Before you get behind the wheel, silence your phone. Or better yet, designate a texter. For more text-free driving tips, visit stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
A delicious power breakfast. Great way to start the day.
I'm Brandon Anthony.
And I'm Keegan Hartman.
Make sure to tune in every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. to listen to me.
And me. On our new show, Breakfast of Champions.
Here on KCOU Sports, KCOU 88.1 FM.
Woo! One more segment to go. And boy, it's a fun one. It is a fun one. Little Snoop Dogg to round out the show. And welcome back into the Studio A in the bottom floor of the Student Center. This is Brandon Anthony in studio once again solo as Keegan Hartman back in the good old Joplin, Missouri, here in spirit in the studio. We got about 10 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, we're going to introduce a new segment. Now, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Anthony rant and Anthony announcement that I haven't done in a while. But the Anthony rant, for instance, I did after we lost to the Dolphins in Week 5. But this segment I really wanted to throw in, and we're not going to do this every week. I'm not going to bore you with my own team because I'm sure you don't care that much about my own team. But for the sake of this week, Keegan's not in the studio. We're going to throw a new segment, Niners Weekly Words of Wisdom. So in this segment, I'll just go out and talk about the Niners' upcoming game, give them advice on what they need to do, and then we'll go from there. And honestly, I think it's a pretty good segment. We'll see if it carries on in the future. But, yeah, that's the segment. So we'll start. So the 4-5 San Francisco 49ers head down to New Orleans this weekend to take on the 6-2 Saints. Keep in mind, New Orleans just blew out Tampa Bay on Sunday Night Football in Week 9. The 49ers are coming off 2 back-to-back blowout losses versus the Seattle Seahawks and Green Bay Packers with half their team out. So not what you want to be going into a game with. The good news is Kendrick Bourne, I just got a notification, is eligible to play Sunday. He's been removed from the reserve COVID-19 list. Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk will also be back on the field for the 49ers. So we got at least a little bit of weapons on the offense back. It won't be a River Craycraft show anymore for San Francisco. My advice to the Niners this week is, hey, at least be competitive in New Orleans. If you don't win, I'm not expecting you to win. If you don't win, it's okay. You're 4-6. It's not the end of the world. Go into the bye, get healthy. I mean, it's New Orleans. It's in New Orleans. New Orleans is coming off a blowout win against Tampa Bay. Their offense is hitting their peak. Drew Brees has been playing pretty well. Emmanuel Sanders will have to play again. Guys have experience covering him after his stint with San Francisco last year. Michael Thomas is there, of course. Alvin Kamara. I mean, they got so many weapons on that offensive side of the ball. Taysom Hill, the Swiss Army knife, of course. It's okay if you don't win. It's New Orleans. You have guys out. You have an excuse, right? But, it'd be nice to be competitive. You're Kyle Shanahan. You got to at least compete with the Saints. Run the ball. Use gadget plays. I haven't seen a gadget play being thrown to Debo, to anyone in 2 weeks. And you got Richie James out there. Granted, Debo and Ayuk were out last week. You got River Craycraft and Richie James out there for wide receiver. Richie James can do that, though. He looked good against Green Bay when he got his opportunity. Richie James just doesn't get enough opportunity in Kyle's system when you got Ayuk and Debo Samuel. He can, especially, use a couple gadget plays. And by gadget plays, I mean those reverses, kind of screen passes like that. You have Kyle Shanahan, when Jimmy Garoppolo is playing quarterback, seems to throw those a lot to Jimmy Garoppolo, right? To protect the quarterback or / he doesn't trust him. Well, that's a whole other story. However, Nick Mullins is playing. Kyle drops back and throws the ball down the field every play. Running the ball is still the bread and butter for the 49ers. I don't care how much you want to say about that, but it is. You got to go out and you got to continue to run the ball and mix in some of those gadget plays. You got Richie James. He can do that. Let's see what he can do. See what he can do with that in that nature. Use gadget plays. And you got Ayuk back. He can do that too. Give him the ball. Use your playmakers that can make something happen. In the defense, the defense last week against Green Bay, beaten up. Aaron Rodgers, the last 2 weeks, really, it's been the Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, and the Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams show. Russell Wilson dropped back, aired it out to DK Metcalf 2 weeks ago, and Aaron Rodgers was under no pressure whatsoever and aired it out to Devontae Adams every play. And San Francisco, they don't have the size to match up with any of those receivers 1v1. So, if I'm Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, I regret not getting a cornerback in the draft in this offseason when you have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in your division, and DeAndre Hopkins for that matter. But that's besides the point. Saints got Michael Thomas. Here's another receiver that he's not as big as DK Metcalf and Devontae Adams, I think, but he's still one of the best receivers in the league, right? You got Emmanuel Sanders. You got that 1-2 punch. It's not just one receiver. The Packers, literally, it's Devontae Adams and no one else. Seattle, it's DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. So this is going to be more like the Seattle game. You take away Michael Thomas, you still got Emmanuel Sanders. And Jared Cook and Taysom Hill. You got all these weapons. So it's going to be tough on the defensive side of the ball. Richard Sherman practiced this week. I don't expect him to be out there. But, hey, we'll see what happens. Kyle said in the press conference a couple days ago, he said, look, we're still in the position to make a run and perhaps get in that tournament at the end of the year. Well, the Niners pull up their schedule. The Niners got a tough road ahead still. I mean, they got no breaks. And they play the Saints this week. Then they have their bye. Then they travel to Los Angeles. And then they go to Buffalo on a Monday night game. And then got finally a break with Washington. Could be a trap game. Who knows? At home. Then they're at Dallas. Then at Arizona. And then versus Seattle to round out the season. So realistically, they're sitting at 4-5. If you somehow, some way, by a miracle, beat the Saints 5-5, going to your bye, you're right there. You get players healthy. You beat the Rams already once on Sunday night. You get the Rams in L.A., probably with Nick Mullins still at quarterback, but that's besides the point. I mean, the Rams still aren't a team to take lightly. They can still perform when they're healthy, and we're not healthy. So they're going to probably have another game plan for us coming forward. The second time we played the Rams last year, it was Sean McVay coming out with a little 20 bootlegs with Jared Goff for the first 50 plays or whatever, and we didn't have any way to stop it. But we adjusted and we won that game anyway. But still, I mean, the Rams game isn't a game to take lightly. That's still going to be a good game. I don't care if you beat them the first time. They're still going to be ready to play. The Bills, that's a tough game. The way the Bills have been playing, it's at home. It's Monday night. I don't know. Josh Allen's mobile too. Stephon Diggs. The Bills' defense, I don't know. Washington, we should finally have a break at least a little bit. Kyle Shanahan at least has a little bit more weaker defense to do stuff against, and a team not as high-powered. I'm interested in that game because Alex Smith will probably make his return to the Bay Area. Shout out to him. What a comeback. What a recovery off of that terrible injury. And it's really emotional to see him back out on the field. It'd be cool to have him come back to San Francisco and see him play against us. Of course, not win. Then at Dallas. Dallas has struggled all year. I'm really not as worried about that game as I was at the beginning of the season. And then, of course, at Arizona and at Seattle versus Seattle to round out the year. Those two games I don't need to tell you about. Those are two tough games as well. Arizona came in and shocked us week 1, running with Kyler Murray. And Seattle, on the other hand, as well, blew us out, essentially. It was the game looked a lot closer than it was just because we put up a lot of garbage time touchdowns. 27-17, I think, was the final score. But, I mean, hey, I don't expect you to win against the Saints. If you go 4-6, get guys healthy in the bye, I mean, you can still make a run. You can still get guys back and potentially make a run. 5-5, it's a lot easier to do that. 4-6, I don't know. 4-6 might be tough. But this season, when the Niners have been down, lost 2 straight, they've always bounced back the next game. So it should be interesting. They got blown out to Miami. They bounced back against the Rams. But, of course, that was with Jimmy Garoppolo back on the field and most of the starters back on the field. They don't got that this time. George Kittle's still out. So we'll see what happens. It's just all about whatever happens at this point. Play one game at a time, like Uncle Greg was saying. It's 1 week at a time. There's a lot of football still left to be played. We'll see what happens. And on that note, it's 10:59. We're going to let you guys go. Next week, I will be not in Columbia, and Keegan Hartman will probably not be in Columbia. We'll be doing the show probably through Zoom or whatever. But that's it for this week's edition of Breakfast of Champions. One last time in the 573. I'll be back home next week. Come check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We will get this show uploaded. And we'll be doing it from different locations next week. And until then, I'm Brandon Anthony signing off. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week.